släpvagn. Time to go. Okay, welcome to the meeting, the AGM, and I will just call it to order. There you go. We all know it starts now. And I'd like to, first of all, open the City of Melville Annual General Meeting of Electors at 6 p.m. and have the pleasure of welcoming everybody in attendance. I would look to end the meeting by 8 p.m. to allow attendees to discuss any other matters with elected members and officers following the meeting. So I advise that this meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and Teams and is being audio recorded. If anyone has concerns with being live streamed, particularly those asking public questions or raising motions, please speak to one of the officers. I now invite the CEO to read the acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge that the Bibbulmun people, as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today, and pay its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders, both past and present.
Okay, I now invite the CEO to provide some general housekeeping matters for the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the event of an emergency, please take some direction from officers and we'll show you how to exit the building safely. We have exit points for the building which we will show you. I'd like to advise you that the toilets are located diagonally opposite the room in the foyer area, should you need to use the toilets. And all participants physically present should have registered their attendance for the meeting prior to entering the room. And each person who participates in a vote or speaks must be an elector or eligible to be an elector of the City of Melville. This meeting is held in accordance with the City of Melville Meeting Procedures Local Law 2022. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, we're up to attendance and apologies. The following councillors are providing an apology for this evening. That's Councillor Green, Councillor Woodall and Councillor Lee. Now, just to introduce the elected members and officers that are here tonight. Now, while elected members are not required to attend the annual general meeting of electors, I would like to acknowledge the following councillors in attendance tonight. Palmyra Melville Willagee Ward, we have Councillor Wheatland, who is our Deputy Mayor. Councillor Fitzgerald. Applecross Mount Pleasant Ward, we have Councillor Ross and Councillor Lim. In the Bateman Cardinia Ward, Bateman Cardinia Murdoch Ward, we have Councillor Hong and Councillor Robbins. Bicton Adderdale Alfred Cove Ward is Councillor Barber, Councillor Edinger, and we have no councillors who are attending electronically. So I'd like to acknowledge the attendance of the Chief Executive Officer, Ms Gail Bowman, and members of her executive team. Oh, I do apologise. Bull Creek Leeming Ward, Councillor Spanbrook did come in belatedly, and I forgot to acknowledge her. Thank you very much for that. Did I miss anybody else? No, I didn't. Did you want to introduce your team? Ms Bowman, the CEO, will introduce her team. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. So I have Ms Marielle Pickering, the Director of Community Development over here, Mr Mick McCarthy, the Director of Environment and Infrastructure here, Mr Gary Tuffin, who is our Director of Corporate Services, and we have Mr Gavin Ponton and Mr Ben Ashwood, who are representing the Director of Planning. Thank you.
And I would like to also acknowledge our support team who are making this possible. Thank you very much for that. Now, the purpose and conduct of the meeting, item 4, the annual general meeting of electors is being held for the community to receive the City of Melville Community Annual Report for 2023 and 2024. The notice of meeting was advertised on the City of Melville website, on public notice boards at the Civic Centre and all City of Melville libraries, in the Fremantle Herald on Saturday 11th of January 2025, in the Perth Now Melville on Thursday 16th of January 2025, and in the City's electronic newsletter and via the City of Melville social media platforms. So I welcome the community's participation at this meeting and request that anyone everyone participates in a respectful manner. And if you're planning to raise a question or a motion at tonight's meeting, please make sure that you provide the city staff a completed form if you have not already done so. Copies are available at the registration table, and this just facilitates a smoother running meeting. Now we're moving on to item 5, presentation of the City of Melville Community Annual Report for 2023 to 2024. If you cast your eyes over in that direction, you'll see some slides. It is with great pleasure I present to the community the City of Melville Community Annual Report 2023 to 2024, including the financial report for the period ending 30 June 2024. If you wish to look at the annual report yourself, please use the code up there on the screen. The City of Melville Community Annual Report was adopted by the Council at an ordinary meeting of the Council held on the 10th of December 2024 and is published on the City of Melville website. Now, in the 2023-24 financial year, the City was guided by 6 community aspirations being clean and green, growth and prosperity, healthy lifestyles, safe and secure, sense of community, sustainable and connected transport. Now, our achievements in the first quarter, July to August 2023, included the commencement of Leisure Fit Booragoon transformation to a modern, accessible swimming facility just recently opened. Second quarter, October to December 2023, saw the City receive a $50,000 Lottery Rest grant to help building community connections through programs such as the Melville Summer Music, which I hope you all attend. It's a very good event, Melville Storylines and Melville Midwinter. In the third quarter, January to March 2024, the Council endorsed the plans for the development of the new library and cultural centre. And the final quarter of that financial year, April to June 2024, we celebrated the opening of the purpose-built mountain bike facility at Doondalup Point Walter. So the annual report presented tonight is until 30th of June 2024, and the City has since then made progress on our new outcomes and objectives, and I look forward to presenting these at the next AGM. Now we're moving on to general business. The first item is public question time, and that's starting at 6:09. Questions received in writing prior to the meeting will be dealt with first. So I'll now, these questions will be answered in the order that they were received. Could you please make your way to the microphone to ask your question when called? Now, the first question is by somebody who could not attend in person tonight, so I'm going to hand that over to the Chief Executive Officer. So it's from Mr. Fitzgibbon of Melville, I should say.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Mr. Fitzgibbon has asked the following question with this preamble. My question pertains to Goal 7 of the City's safe and secure objective as enunciated in the Community Annual Report, namely safe and secure places and environments. 2 years ago, Mr. Fitzgibbon brought to the attention of the City via an elected member his frequent observation that at Katagini Park, Kitchener Road, there were 4 gates to the security enclosure of the children's playground that were being left open, presenting a potential risk that a child could exit the enclosed playground unsighted and potentially come to grief on busy Kitchener Road or elsewhere. Nothing has changed in his opinion and gates continue to be left open. It is difficult for parents to keep multiple children in sight, and when a child ventures to a side entry, they go out of sight. Parents and they could actually go quite close to Kitchener Road, which is frequently left open. Additionally, gate latches are not child-proof at 1100 millimetres high. So the question, it has been acknowledged by the City that some children require secure spaces. Can the City please give attention to the gates and provide better security for the children at Katagini Park? And the Director of Environment and Infrastructure will read the response.
Thank you, CEO. In terms of response, the entry gates to the playground at Katagini Park are designed to be shut by those utilising the playground, generally the parents accompanying young children. We have found that self-closing gates and pull type locking mechanisms are often prone to mechanical failure or vandalism at high-use facilities such as the one at Catagini Park. A recent inspection of the gates indicated that the gates to be functioning as designed, however they are reaching their end of their useful life. The City will investigate renewing the gates in the 25-26 financial year. This will involve reviewing various gate styles and select a gate that is best suited for the playground at Catagini Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mr. Willis of Bull Creek. Is he present? All right, thank you. Ms. Bowman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I will ask Mr. Willis's question on his behalf. So Mr. Willis has asked, as waste disposal is one of the most important services provided by Council, what is the City of Melville proposed strategy for disposal of waste in the future? And the Director of Environment and Infrastructure will read the response. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. So the City is a leader in waste management with one of the highest resource recovery rates, 60% or greater, through its best practice 3-bin FOGO system. The cities of Fremantle and Melville have both resolved to withdraw from the RRG Canning Vale Centre project by December 2025 due to unsustainable overhead costs following the withdrawal of other member councils. The RRG and remaining councils are working with the City of Canning, who's the landowner, to transition the waste recycling, FOGO and material recovery operations at the Canning Vale Centre to a new operator through a request for proposals process expected to be initiated in February 2025. The City's strategy for the disposal of waste is set out in the City's 2021 to 25 waste plan. One of those actions from the plan was that all residential waste be disposed of through the waste to energy facility. This has been in place since late 2024 through the disposal of all red bin waste through the Kwinana waste to energy plant. The waste plan is due for renewal soon, and that will involve working with the RAG and factoring in the City's new waste plan. At this stage, the City has no plans to move away from the FOGO model, and it is the model the state government wants implemented across local governments to ensure consistency in curbside collection services across the state, and is a key to the state achieving its waste diversion targets.
Thank you. Our next question is from Miss Wall from Ardros. Is she present?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Please move over to the lectern and ask your question.
Thank you. Good evening, elected councillors, public service officers and fellow electors. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. According to the City of Melville's financial statement for 2024, it demonstrates the city is a financially viable entity. This means that the city has the financial resources to engage the subject matter experts required to investigate the viability of high-density urban infill in suburbs surrounding critical transport hubs of Bull Creek and Murdoch stations. Can the council please confirm if it is willing, with genuine intent, to investigate this proposition as part of the LPS 6 review prior to putting the current proposal plan to a vote? And the second part, if not, will the council provide the community with honest reasons why this will not be considered?
Thank you for your questions. I'll ask Mr. Gavin Ponton to provide a response on behalf of the Director of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I answer the question, it might be of assistance just to provide a brief overview of where we are at in the Local Planning Scheme 6 review process. Would like to highlight that the process is in the early stages. A preliminary engagement phase has recently been undertaken, and that was to gain feedback on a series of draft proposals and to better understand the concerns and opportunities in the community. This is the stage we're currently at. Next step is for Council to consider the preliminary feedback that's been received and decide which of the draft proposals are suitable to proceed, whether any of the proposals need modification, and whether some of the preliminary proposals should not proceed. So workshops to progress this phase are scheduled to commence in approximately April this year. Once decisions on the draft proposals are made, the next step is that the city is required to forward this suite of draft changes to the Minister for Planning for approval to commence an advertising of those proposals. Once we receive this approval, we'll be in a position to commence a comprehensive engagement process on the draft changes. This engagement process will include opportunity for all stakeholders to have input on the proposed changes. This comprehensive engagement phase is over and above the preliminary consultation phase which recently took place. At the conclusion of this comprehensive engagement phase, the proposal will again be presented to Council for decisions on which changes should proceed and which require modification. The draft scheme is then forwarded to the state government for final approvals. So I just wanted to clarify before we get into the questions that the main opportunity for feedback on draft proposals as part of the review of Local Planning Scheme 6 is yet to commence. Also that decisions by Council in the coming months and workshops will relate only to endorsement of proposals for further consultation and they're not final decisions. So I'll move back to the response to the questions to do with the Bull Creek and Murdoch train stations, which have been identified as investigation areas under Local Planning Scheme 6 review. So the timing of the further investigations into precinct planning opportunities at Bull Creek and Murdoch train stations was considered by Council at its meeting in September 2024. Based on the Council's resolution, these investigations are currently scheduled to progress at a later date. Council's decision had regard to project scheduling and available resources. Consideration was also given to the suitability of these precincts to transition to the sort of intensity envisaged for these key infill areas, as well as the support from stakeholders, including the relevant state agencies that would need to be involved in this type of project. It's noted that based on the city's assessment, the future density increase delivered in the train station precincts will be required in addition to the increases currently being considered elsewhere as part of the Local Planning Scheme 6 review. Council may choose to revisit the timing and resourcing of this project as the review of Local Planning Scheme 6 progresses. The business case to progress the project would be required to address project scheduling and resourcing issues and also demonstrate the readiness of the precinct and relevant stakeholders to implement a significant transition. In terms of the follow-up question, if not, will the city provide the community with honest reasons why this is not being considered? Our response is that that is covered in the answer that I've just read out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question from Miss Cole of Melville. Would you be here in attendance? You are. Thank you. Can you ask that question later, please?
Yes, I can.
Because we're opening question time up for those who haven't submitted questions later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody, to the councillors, to the staff and to my other fellow residents. I wanted to talk about a situation that is to do with healthy, safe and inclusive environments, clean and green and sustainable and connected development. So in the interest of brevity, I will take it as a given that we all understand the need for a high rate of tree canopy in order to support residents' physical and mental health and economic benefits such as reduced air conditioning costs and maintain or increase the value of properties. It was widely accepted internationally that as a bare minimum, every resident should be able to look out their door and be able to see 3 trees of a significant size, live in an urban environment that has at least 30% canopy and be 300 metres from public open space. While it's acknowledged the city has recently implemented a tree target canopy of 15% by 2050, this target is concerningly short of accepted requirements for the health and of the current community and is grossly inadequate for the well-being of future residents who will be combating the effects of a warmer climate. The legacy of diminishing and inadequate canopy to such dangerously low levels is occurring on our watch as homeowners and custodians of our large trees, and on yours as elected members and staff. So with this brief introduction in mind, I have the following questions for consideration. Could you please ensure that you share in the minutes of this meeting the results of the recent City of Melville survey of residents that shows majority support for regulating trees on private property? This was published on 21 December on the City of Melville website. As residents have demonstrated, retaining large trees on private property is important to them. Therefore, when will the removal of trees on private property be regulated as per Walgett recommendations in the City of Melville, and has already occurred in Peppermint Grove, Nedlands, Cambridge, etc., and likely to occur shortly in our neighbours Fremantle and Coburn? How will the proposed LP6 changes encourage the retention of trees on private property, as the proposed changes do not seem to reflect the community's desire for tree retention? And in the likely event of the return of the Labor government, Premier Cook has pledged to double tree canopy to 30% in Perth and Peel by 2040. His pledge falls short of the required funding that would be needed, and I have no doubt that a strategy the state government will use, as they do, is to claim that this is in part the responsibility of local councils. What forward planning will be given to meeting the 30% target in the City of Melville, given that retaining existing trees of a significant size is the most cost-effective way for the City of Melville to reach that target? If no strategy has been considered, can a working party please be established to consider how to reach this target before introducing changes to the local planning policies that will prematurely diminish tree canopy cover, potentially costing the council more in the longer term? And can the city work to establish a compulsory verge tree strategy as exists in neighbouring councils? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I'll ask the Manager of Strategic Planning to answer your first 4 questions, and then the Director of Environment and Infrastructure will answer your last one. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. I'll try and summarise where possible in terms of the responses. So in relation to response 1, the results from the recent engagement showed that survey respondents supported a local planning policy that focuses on retaining trees on private property and or replacing mature trees. The engagement snapshot will be attached to the minutes. In relation to response question 2, the City recently engaged with our community on the issue of private tree loss. The City is now preparing to present that feedback to Council and seek direction on how to proceed. We're aiming to have that work completed by June 2025. In response 3, residential infill is a leading cause of canopy loss. We do have a situation where the state housing's supply mandate appears to be in conflict with tree protection objectives. Recent decisions have demonstrated that scheme-based tree retention provisions are not likely to be supported. Council direction on this issue may ultimately result in a request to respond under a local planning policy. Nonetheless, the City is reviewing controls in Local Planning Scheme 6 that apply to non-residential development where there's less restrictions. This may include provisions designed to retain or require planting of trees as part of development. The review of Local Planning Scheme 6 will also continue to examine ways to accommodate additional dwellings in a manner which reduces tree loss. The strategy of concentrating density increases in smaller areas not only aligns with the City and state local planning strategies, but offers opportunity for fewer trees to be lost. In relation to the election promise 30% target, as a recent election promise, this 30% target has not yet been considered as part of the City's established approach to protecting trees. The City has, however, approved its urban forest strategy, which includes its own tree canopy targets based on modelling specific to the City of Melville and realistic growth targets and locations to support additional tree planting. In the event the state government were to progress a policy that included a 30% target, the city would review its framework accordingly.
Thank you. In regards to the final question related to the compulsory verge tree strategy, the modelling that Gavin's just referred to did include a verge tree on every verge, so that's being factored into the 15%. The city will be looking as the LPS 6 review progresses on how the city can achieve that target of 15%, and obviously if there's any moves from the state government to provide mechanisms to strengthen that, we would most definitely be looking at how those could be applied.
Thank you. We now have a question from Mr. Willis of Bull Creek. Just for his information, we have already answered the question on a Waste Resource Recovery Group, the RRG. So please come forward for your second question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, elected members, officers. My name is Rob Willis of 6 Pearl Mews. My question relates to last Thursday, the 23rd of January, when we had a major bushfire in Bull Creek at Gibbichi Reserve. I'm a member or friend of that particular reserve. We've planted thousands of trees in conjunction with the council, and I can commend the staff with their help to achieve this. So I look out over 100 odd trees when I look out the front of my house. But it has a danger because bushfires do occur with bushland, and there's a need for some consideration there. In my experience, when we had the fire on the 23rd of January, there were 3 major explosions that brought us to our notice. And this, we believe, was due to excessive bush fuel load that had probably resulted, as a result, there hadn't been a bushfire there for 30 years. There'd been other bushfires, but not in this particular area, which obviously shook our local community. Thanks to the fire brigade, helicopters and the community help. Luckily it was on school holidays, so we had lots of children there with buckets of water helping the fire brigade putting out fires. Not just in our front lawn, but our neighbours behind, where when you have an explosion and you've got this monstrous flame going up 30 odd metres, it takes live leaves and branches and seeds, which keep the heat, and drop onto the dry verges, and you only have to go down Springfella and you'll see 2 locations where bushfires were lit by these particular leaves. So obviously we had a good management strategy of watering our houses, making sure our gutters were empty of leaves, which most residents probably don't do. So we certainly think the fire brigade, Murdoch were there within 10 minutes, but we had Coburn and over from Canning as well, we had the fire brigade there, so that was really good. And so it really raises the questions that I'd like to ask the council. What action is taken by council to reduce the risk of fire in an urban environment when landscaping and planting of trees in bushlands near homes? What action will council take to revegetate and repair damage taken by the bushfire? And what action will be taken by council on still existing thick bushland north and south of Brockman, and you only have to go down there and have a look at it and you'll see it. And I'm pleased one of my ward councillors has been down there to have a look at the devastation of this and the potential future. And there's only a 3-metre fire break from trees that are up 3 or 4 metres in height from a house, and that's the concern I have, because that'll only make people being opposed to having trees being planted in our community.
Thank you very much for your questions, Mr. Willis. Unfortunately, we only received the questions this morning, so we haven't had a lot of time to prepare a response. But in essence, the city does take bushfire risk management very seriously, and we're still assessing the damage done to that particular reserve to then look at obviously working with the Friends of Group and the community to make sure we revegetate that site. But it's still quite early since the incident happened, and so we're still going through an assessment process And from a bushfire risk management perspective, we are currently working with the Department of Fire and Emergency Services to look at our bushfire management across the city, and we do take bushfire risk management as a serious risk and something that needs to be mitigated against and controlled. So we're currently working with DFS on a management plan which considers all those bushfire-prone areas across the city of Melville. But we will give you a full response to your questions in the minutes. So thank you very much.
So thank you for the response on waste. I did hear the end of it, and it's good to see that there's some strategies in place for waste as well. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Pleasure. So there's now an opportunity for those attending to ask a question from the floor, but please ensure your questions are concise, respectful, and state your name and your suburb. For those participating online, please use the Q&A function and officers will read your question out. For those in the room, please make your way to the microphone, and if you wish to ask a question this evening and have not already done so, please complete a hard copy form and hand it to the member of staff. Copies are available at the registration desk. This is so we can clearly record what your question is and make sure that we have the appropriate answers for you. So I understand there is a person who wants to ask a question. Please come forward to the microphone.
Thank you for giving me another opportunity to ask a further question. Correspondence that I received...
can you please give your name and suburb?
I can.
Thank you.
It's Karen, Wall and Ardross.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence that I received from Gavin Ponton on the 13th of December 2024 stated, community engagement put forward changes approximately 7% of Melville's residential lots, in some instances proposing quite concentrated density changes. Can the council please confirm if the proposed 7% of Melville's residential lots subject to zoning changes are fully utilised? How many additional dwellings will be made available? What percentage will be allocated for affordable housing as defined by the National Housing Accord? And what percentage will be set aside for social housing?
Thank you for your questions. We did receive those in writing in advance, so apologies for not going through them earlier. The Manager of Strategic Planning will be able to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The response to question 1, the areas identified for possible residential density changes in the preliminary stages of the review of Local Planning Scheme 6 focus on a small number of strategic locations. As you've highlighted, that is approximately 7% of the city's area. The proposed changes respond to state government dwelling targets, and that specifies that the city is required to achieve a total of 58,590 dwellings by the year 2050. That equates to approximately 14,500 additional dwellings between now and 2050. Changes proposed aim at providing opportunities to accommodate these additional dwellings. However, calculation of the current preliminary proposals, taking into account likely rate of development, estimate that the yield to 2050 will be less than that overall target of 58,590, so less than the 14,500 additional dwellings. In terms of question 2, looking at affordable housing, the review of Local Planning Scheme 6 and the city's housing strategy will seek diversity in housing type and affordability. Decisions on measures to explore allocation of affordable or social housing will form part of further considerations in the review process. That response also responds to question 3.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please proceed to the microphone.
Good evening all. Merv French from Bicton. Just two quick questions, if I may. Some time ago there was consultation put up for doing some sort of improvements at the Addertail Dog Park. I just wondered anything else happening there or where we're up to. And second one, if I may, does the council in any time in the foreseeable future have any plans to do anything at Point Walter? I feel that the area down there, the cafe,
Can I have your attention, please? They were very fast and they managed to reset everything and we're ready to go. There is another question we have received in writing from Thompson. Can you please come forward, give us your name and your suburb and ask your question, please?
Hi, Kim Thompson from Booragoon. My question is, in the local housing strategy document, clause 9.15, it mentions that residents greatly value low-key suburban character, and where residential density is not desired, it is best to keep R codes under R40 to allow council to keep control of building heights. Why then are codes well in excess of R40, namely R50, R60, R80 and R100 being proposed for our suburban streets?
Thank you for your question. I'll see if the Manager of Strategic Planning can just provide a brief response, but it's quite I guess, a comprehensive question and we'll need to take most of it on notice, so thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. As per the preamble earlier in the night, we're at the early stages and we're listening to the feedback that's coming back, and there's a lot of further council decisions to be made. There will, however, be parts of the city that are of strategic significance to warrant densities above R40, and in terms of providing a brief answer to your question, preliminary investigations analysis has identified a number of those areas, and that would be translated into proposed R codings. But I reiterate that the proposals that are out now are preliminary. The formal advertising is down the track, and decisions as to which proposals are retained, which proposals are modified, and which proposals don't proceed at all are still yet to be made by council.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? You have one? Please come forward and give us your name and your suburb.
Good evening, everyone. It's Martin Kelcoven, Applecross. My question is not written down, unfortunately. It's been inspired by previous questions. My experience with these issues on planning and so forth is that there isn't the desired transparency for residents for what the final impact of these decisions are. Could we request that when the planning process goes through for the changes to density, could they please be explicit what the maximum implications are for heights and setbacks and all the requirements? Because the experience was with the Canning Bridge precinct, we were convinced that the plan was for 15 stories, and we ended up with 30 stories due to the fine print, so to speak. So we would really like to have an upfront, honest discussion as to what are the real and possible implications. And I would ask you to identify all of those little tiny fine prints, because we as the public don't have access to that sort of information, only find out after the event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, your comment, your request. The city is committed to being very transparent and open with the community, and we will endeavour to make sure that it's very clear what the impacts will be in plain English as well, using the planning framework and making sure it's clear as to what the impacts are, and we will engage very fully with the community around explaining what that means, what the impacts are. The planning staff are very committed to making sure you fully understand with the planning framework that you referenced with the Canning Bridge Activity Centre area. There are some things which, as you might understand, are not within the City of Melville's decision-making authority as well. So we'll be clear about what is within the City of Melville's decision-making authority versus what is the state government's or other entities' decision-making.
If at all possible, could we also add that as an addendum to any decisions? In other words, City of Melville has authority to this point. The government may do this, this and this, and that would have an impact of, for example, doubling the height of the buildings. That would be good to know, because then if it's not City of Melville, who do we approach?
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions, we're going to move on to motions from the community. Now, motions will be raised in the order that they were received. If you wish to present a motion this evening and have not already done so, please complete a hard copy motion form and hand it to a member of staff. Copies are available at the registration desk to fill in. Now, the first motion, we're going to put them up on the screen for those people. I think the meeting probably doesn't have copies of those, so they're going to go up on the screen. The first motion is by Ms. Kavanagh of Cardinia. Would you like to make your way to the microphone, please? And in the meantime, please read the motion, because she will need a seconder before she speaks to it. So is there anyone willing to be a seconder of this item? We have a seconder. Please state your name and suburb. Thank you. All right, Ms. Kavanagh, would you like to speak to your motion?
My motion is for a temporary art installation called The Forest of the Fallen, the City of Melville to give blanket approval for this art installation. It has minimal impacts on the environment. It's temporary, and it's a silent walkthrough to honour those who have been injured by our state and federal governments. I would also like to ensure that the City of Melville Rangers do not disrupt the Forest of the Fallen. And given that the City of Melville offers aesthetic grants, I would like to see that the City of Melville considers the Forest of the Fallen for artistic grants.
Okay, thank you. Would the speaker like to speak now or later? Okay, thank you. Is there a speaker against? If there's no speaker against, I'm going to put that motion to the vote. All right, so we've got a bit of a process here. Pardon? You wish to ask a question? We have a councillor who wishes to ask a question. Yes, please.
I apologise. This is the first I've heard of forests of the fallen. I am completely ignorant as to what it's about, what kinds of harms you're talking about when you say harms by state and federal government. So I wonder if it might assist others if you could just give us some background about.
These are for vaccine-injured people, particularly Western Australians and those who were vaccine-injured at Fiona Stanley Hospital. The installation is generally on bamboo poles and is paper representation of the person who has been injured or who has unfortunately passed away. And it's a silent walkthrough.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments, or would anybody like to speak at this point?
One more clarity. Sorry.
One more question for clarity.
Sorry, thank you. So is that directly relating to the COVID vaccine?
Yes, it is, and other vaccines as
And
well.
other vaccines, so it's vaccinations in general?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
just with regard to your motion, you've got there granting a blanket approval. So what exactly are you referring to as a blanket approval? Is this going to be all throughout the city of Melville, or is this a specific area?
It's just at parks. It's a temporary installation. So, for instance, where we have the Melville Nights at, the Limestone Melville Nights, we might have the installation there for people to walk through before they enjoy the music. Or we might have the installation at the Jacaranda Festival. So
okay.
Yeah, so without having to keep on going and asking for approval and going through the long and arduous process.
Just wondering, is it possible to identify the events that you wish to tag on to with regard to this? Would be quite helpful when it does go to council. Thank you.
Yes, so would you like that in a list or email? I can't.
I think that'll be really helpful. Yes, please. Thank you.
Email would be helpful. Yes, thank you.
To you directly, Madam Mayor, or to Councillor Spanbrook, or to the council in general?
To all elected members?
To all elected members.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And can I please request that it gets sent to the governance team as well? So there's a governance email address, so if you could please send it there as well. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Is there any further questions or statements people need to make? We'll move on to the vote then. All of those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. And we have, yes. Now, for those online, can you please use the poll function? And the poll will remain open for 30 seconds. Please tell me when you've finished counting. Have you finished the count for the yeses? We need the count for the noes. Are we ready for that? I'm looking at officers because they've got an online poll as well to look at. Are we ready for the no vote? Okay, all those against, please raise your hands. And also those online, use the poll function. Can you see the hands clearly? Yes? Tell me when you've finished. You completed the, how is the online polling going? Okay, we have a result. That motion is lost, 12-19. Thank you very much for your motion.
Thank you.
We're now moving on to our next motion by Mr. French. Could you please come forward to speak to your motion? It is on the screen. Can we have that motion, second motion on the screen, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Just if you wait a moment, we're waiting for the second one. Yes, there it is.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief Executive.
Before you speak, do you have a seconder? Has everybody got enough time to have a quick look and let me know if you're happy to second this?
I will second.
You'll second. Thank you. Name and suburb.
Miss Wall and I. Ross.
Thank you. You can speak to it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, Chief Executive, elected members and council officers, especially Gavin, who's the hardest working man in the room tonight. And I do apologise for that. So I'll just read the motion for you as I'm required to. My motion is that the council, in accordance with key priority 3 of the City of Melville Community Annual Report of 2023-24 immediately addressed the apparent non-compliance in the recently presented consultation process diagram for LPS 6 review, which was posted on the website on the 23rd of the 1st, 2025, with respect to the City's Stakeholder Engagement Policy CP002, which mandates that all relevant stakeholders be given a fair and meaningful opportunity to participate. Specifically, we, the community, should be given the opportunity to, 1, review the report of findings from the recent LPS 6 community consultation. 2, we, the community, should be able to have the report amended, including but not limited to outcomes and recommendations made where the report fails to respond appropriately to the feedback, comments and concerns resulting from the community consultation process. 3, carry out the above before submission to the Council for approval and subsequent progression to the statutory scheme amendment process. I can elaborate further on the reasons, but I guess I need to wait for questions. This is the first time I've done this, and I've only just learnt the process from what happened in the last motion.
So you've read out the motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I'll speak to the motion. So we're very grateful to the City for undertaking the early engagement concerning the LPS 6 review, stage 3, and we thank the City for doing so. However, from this early engagement, numerous substantial, valid concerns have arisen with supporting lines of evidence with respect to both what the City has proposed so far and how the consultation process has and continues to be conducted, including the recently updated consultation process. I have provided specific examples, but I'll just go on for the moment. Trust in the City is being significantly eroded due to a series of missteps in the City's stage 3 consultation process, which, despite the best intentions of early engagement, and I do emphasise we appreciate it is early engagement, we thank you for doing so, have left the community questioning if the City really understands issues of critical importance in our community, and which we have found it necessary to voice through objections and a significant amount of other correspondence. Due to the valid concerns we have raised, the full community must now be given the opportunity to review and obtain amendment to the report if it fails to respond appropriately to valid concerns raised by the community before any formal council approval and progression to statutory process. I could go on, but I think I'll stop there. For me personally, this is a matter where I do not have confidence in what it is you have presented. I've found deficiencies in how you have presented it, and I'm therefore not confident in the process going forwards and what's in that report and what will go to you for approval. I think we need to see it, understand it, and we need to be able to have the chance to tell you if you have not responded appropriately to our concerns.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak now or later?
I will reserve my right.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? If there's no speaker against, are you happy for me to put this to the vote? All right, so let's put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And for those online, please use the vote using the poll function to vote. I'll wait for the officers to let me know when they finished the count, both online and in this room. You've got the counting, and Polly, you'll check it. We have the count in the room, so you can lower your arms now. Pardon? Okay, thank you. It's the vote against now. Please raise your hands if you are against this motion, and those online also. Thank you. The vote is carried 38-0. Well done. Now, Mr. French, you had a second motion. We'll wait for that to go up on the screen. Thank you. Did you wish to read that again? It's in smaller print this time. I'm just waiting for them to read it. I'll just wait till you've had a moment to look at that. Can everybody read it clearly? Anyone who feels confident that they can second that, please raise your hand. Yes, please state your name and your suburb. Thank you. Has everybody read it and are ready to receive the debate? Please put your case.
Okay, my second motion that I wish to put forward is somewhat related to the first. That the Council requests, one, the Chief Executive Officer to present a report to Council on the resource requirements, key considerations and implications of developing precinct structure plans for the Bull Creek and Murdoch train station precincts for inclusion in the LPS 6 review. Two, request that the key considerations include, but not be limited to, A, identification of the location and construction of safe pedestrian and bicycle access ways from surrounding residential and or business areas. B, approach the state government for, one, funding to support the preparation of plans and construction of pedestrian and bicycle access ways. Two, technical support from the Metronet / Development WA planning teams / professionals who have already developed the Metronet station gateway model for station precinct activation. Specifically, utilise this existing expertise and model approach to support activation of Bull Creek and Murdoch train station precincts. C, preparation of land use plans, including zoning and density. D, include the identification of new public open spaces and other necessary infrastructure changes or requirements that are required to support the increased density. 3, request an elected member briefing session on the key considerations and other related matters prior to presentation to Council. 4, request that the report be presented to an ordinary meeting of Council by May 2025. The reasons for this motion are, you will not be surprised, related to my previous motion. We are grateful to the City for engaging in early engagement concerning the LPS 6 review, and we thank the City for doing so. However, from this engagement, numerous substantial, valid concerns have arisen with supporting lines of evidence with respect to both what the City has so far proposed, in particular, a failure to recognise and progress strategic opportunities around activation of rail station precincts. The dismissal by elected members in a September Council meeting and then Mayor in a radio interview on the 24th of 9th, 2024 of not having the resources to address this is simply not good enough. An obvious precedent has already been set by Metronet station precinct activation, which would provide a model approach with supporting experience established by the Metronet and Development WA professionals that develop them. Instead, the City has pursued ill-conceived and insensitive proposals along already heavily congested road corridors and targeting much valued residential streets, with both contradict the City's endorsed environmental strategies and threaten to irreparably degrade the character and quality of the suburbs, which the community has already told the City are of critical importance. LPS 6 zoning that the City has proposed is therefore significantly flawed. Pursuing the current approach, because it is easier and places less demand upon the city resources, is inexcusable and deeply disrespectful to the community that the city is mandated to serve. Investigation of Bull Creek and Murdoch train station precinct activation should be progressed now and as a high priority. Thank you very much.
Does the seconder wish to speak now or later? Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against this motion? Okay, there doesn't appear to be anybody who wishes to speak against it, so I'll take it to the vote with your agreement. And all those in favour, please raise your hands. And those online, please use that polling function. Online, can you please raise your hands? It will be a little easier, I think, probably. You have the count. You can lower your hands now. And can we have the no vote, please? Raise your hands if you do not agree with this motion. This motion is carried 45-0. Thank you, Mr. French. We now move to the last motion received with notice. This motion is moved by Ms. Cole. Could you please come forward?
Sorry, I've got pins and needles.
The motion is on the screen in nice big print, if you just cast your eyes over that direction. When you are comfortable with what you have read, is there a seconder? Seconder, please state your name and your suburb. Thank you. Can you please put your case forward?
Certainly. I've already spoken tonight in my recent questions, so I won't labour those points again, except to say, by our own admission tonight, we've heard that the best the council can do is have 15 to 17% on public land. And we know that most tree canopy is lost on private land without even a planning conversation from a developer or a homeowner about whether or not a tree can be contained. Walga last year released some planning guidelines for all councils, of which Melville actually participated in, to actually develop a local planning policy that recommended sensible protection of trees or replacement of trees on private property. Several other councils have already undertaken to implement that local planning policy, and to name a few tonight, I've already talked about Cambridge, Nedlands, Peppermint Grove, and also our neighbours Coburn and Fremantle are very positively considering that same information. So my proposal that I actually submitted last year, which was noted, and I'd like to note again, I'll get the motion again, is that Council adopt the Walga Local Planning Tree Retention Policy released in March 2024 with the purpose of clarifying whether tree removal or tree damaging activity is works that requires development approval and supports consistency across councils within Perth metropolitan areas in relation to protecting trees on private property. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against? Yes, you can. Could you come to the microphone and ask the question? Oh, we have a microphone coming.
One question I have, would that require an arborist to actually check the trees, and at whose cost that would be if it's on private property? And if a structural insurer requires a tree to be removed or reduced in size, would that cost come at the private property owner's cost or at the council's cost?
Yes, if you do have an answer, that would be helpful.
Sure. Walga certainly has some recommendations, and I do know that each of the councils has looked at those particular issues and purposely fitted their response to that according to what would suit their community. So that has been part of the consultation. Peppermint Grove, I know, took it pretty much straightforward as Walga did, whereas Nedlands has taken certain changes that actually accommodate that. Tree safety on your private property is actually a homeowner's expense, that's true. Just like, your pipes under your plumbing, your electricity, etc., where that's damaged on your private property, so that is true. If there was a structural or sensible, there is always, within the policy that Walga suggests, there is the ability for sensible tree removal where a tree is damaged or sick. So that is actually part of the Walga policy. I don't know if that answers all your questions. Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Any further speakers? All right, we'll put that to the vote then. So all those in favour, please raise your hands, and online, please raise your hands also. Okay, thank you. Let me know when you're ready for the no vote. Or you can lower your hands now, thank you. Yes, those against? And online as well, please. The motion is carried 34-6. Thank you. Now, the motions that are passed are scheduled to be considered by the Council at the March ordinary meeting of Council, and the movers of the motions will be advised of the outcome. Now, are there any further motions from the floor? There appears to be no motions from the floor. So this brings us to the end of the meeting. And so for the purposes of the audio recording, we don't need to confirm any councillors online. There are none. So if there be no further business, I thank everyone for your attendance and participation this evening, and I declare the meeting closed at 7:16. Please stay and talk to the staff if you have any questions or queries about any of the matters tonight or other issues. And we also have the elected members who will stay and have a chat to you as well. Thank you for your attendance tonight.